Your will.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm speaking with Setna Kamwast of Kemet because it is time for Setna to speak. Greetings, Setna. How are you?
I'm well. Life, health, and prosperity to all. And welcome the Day of the Dead, the Dios de la Muerte in Mexico. And this is the day the skulls speak.
I
So
remember
I'm very
being
honored as an Osirian. I'm
Mexico.
very honored to be talking about something which my Egyptian ancestors also did in different ways.
I remember I celebrated Dia de Muertos in Mexico. Oh, it must have been like 30 years ago or so, and it was a wonderful time. The
My
parade, pageantry, it was great.
my mother's brother once brought me, and I didn't know it at the time, a cast latex skull mask, which I didn't know till many years later was cast off of an actual skull.
Ah,
When I found out, I never wore it again. I was mortified. I thought it was, I didn't want to wear somebody else's dead face.
wise, very wise.
Not very much fun.
So
So
you did a ritual recently. I can't wait to hear all about it.
it was quite beautiful. I did what we're doing right now, a Zoom ritual. My people, they are two necromancers. I will not give their names. I don't know if they're comfortable enough to do that, but they are right there in New Jersey. And they and I summoned the energies of family members and dear friends that had passed on. And they made predictions for the coming year. And we also said goodbye to loved ones and family members and honored them. And that is how the ritual was done. We started by blessing, of course, the four directions
Mhm.
of the altar. I simulated a temple like this. This is my virtual temple of the Neteru, the temple of the gods of Egypt, the pantheon of the gods of Egypt, which is my group for Neteru. And something wonderful has just happened, but I'll get into that in a minute. What we've done then is we blessed the altar and the people in it. They were all given dis- instructions as to an offerings, which would be a fruit juice. I don't drink alcohol, so fruit juice and some kind of a cake or wine. I actually used tortilla. I used raw tortilla, which is very much like the bread they made in Egypt. So I used that as an offering and prayer, and that was then put, as the pagans do, into our chalice and asked the gods to accept the offering. We blessed that. We gave prayers to those that needed them, including yourself.
Well, thank
And well, always, I always will include my dear friends and colleagues to make sure that we're all, taken care of. And then we ended the ritual. The next, about an hour or two afterwards, after meditation, brought the offering to a beautiful tree outside of my windows. Um, yes, Oliver. And I have a visitor. And I asked the tree to accept my offering. And then I closed the ritual and we ended it for the night.
you. That sounds beautiful.
It was very beautiful. What I was going to tell you is I have just spoken to about nine different members of different Egyptian Kemetic societies. I am creating a coalition of Kemetic peoples. All are welcome who are involved or interested in the ancient Egyptian ritual traditions. We will be swapping prayers, rituals, ritual tools, the use of hieroglyph, the use of our our different wands and amulets and charms and things, and also the prayers to the different gods and goddesses, so that we will all be on the same page. And this is worldwide. I've talked to people in Africa, in Egypt, in England, California, New Jersey, obviously, Florida, and there are people here in Savannah and in New York, New York.
Also, I started something very similar with the Hellenic Olympian traditions. And one of the manifestations is a podcast called Olympian Paths.
Well, This is going to be called the children of the Neteru, the gods and Nechteru, the gods and goddesses of Egypt. And it will not be some focusing on one or the other, but each member of the group will be what I call a godhead. So you'll have an Isis, a Selket, an Osiris, a Set, an Anubis. All of those beings are going to be represented by a member of the priest or priestess class, as was done in the temples in ancient Egypt. And I think it's time for a resurgence. So I took the initiative to make this happen. And I'm very proud of that because it's the response has been humongous.
That is fantastic, and I look forward to chronicling that here on the podcast.
And we will, as it is also a theurgy, we are working with a different ritual energy form, a very ancient energy form, I will say. And so this is something that I thought needed to be brought into the forefront. We had all these disjointed groups, the temple of this, that, and the other thing, and many of them were just didn't have enough traditions. They were reading things out of books. I read things out of the temples, out of the pyramids and the temples and the tombs in Egypt, and also in the Metropolitan Museum. I
Hmm.
was caught many times reading the walls of various tombs they have there. The mastaba in the middle of the Metropolitan Museum's Egyptian wing, which is about what this looks like. And the Temple of Dendor, if you wish. That is not a temple, it's a chapel. It's a little tiny chapel. That's why they were able to give it to the New Yorkers. And it's not Egyptian at all, even though it looks Egyptian. It was built by Octavian, Augustus Caesar, for his governor. The governor is called an autocrator in Egypt in the Roman period. And so it shows the Roman governor like this, and he is being given an ankh, a symbol of life by all the gods and goddesses. They're blessing his, um, I guess, his inauguration, his becoming the governor of Egypt. And people, and there's also a lot of graffiti in there from the ancient Roman times to French to as far as the 1800s. Before that was quadrant off, and then of course the Aswan Dam almost flooded the thing, and that's why the Egyptians gave it to us. So it's kind
I
of fun.
remember
I
visiting
spent many I
him,
I
and
spent many days meditating and praying in that temple when I was in New York.
as did I. I used to go there and meditate all the time.
So that's what I'm up to now. If anyone out there in television land, as it were, or Zoom land, YouTube land, wishes to be part of what we're doing, please communicate to Hercules or to myself. I only require this that you have um, a little more than basic knowledge of ancient Egyptian ritual and the willingness to learn and to work with all of us. We are many different kinds of people that are all over the country and all over the world. So all I'm saying to all of you is that if you want to get involved, please let me know or Hercules or anybody else that's involved with what you know, where you want to go with your um, venue, which perhaps which god or goddess head you're going to work with or you'd like to know about. If you're a scribe or a musician, a robe maker, all of those things, we are, as the temples were, we are becoming an industry. So we'll be self-sufficient. My amulets that I'm wearing were made by a fellow named Noah, who is in Alexandria and Cairo. My ankh was made in Luxor, for instance. So I'm wearing things that people that are involved in these groups, and that's why I'm wearing them. This was made in Cairo also, and this was made in Alexandria. So I'm wearing these things so that you can see what the people of the Kemetic peoples, current Kemetic peoples, are doing. I want you to see, and there is spiritual energy here. Each one of these scarabs is made by hand. This scarab that I have on here, which is lapis lazuli, as the eye of Horus, the little eye of Horus is, were made by hand in Egypt. So I'm very proud to show you Egyptian handiwork, spiritual handiwork. These things all have a charge. because they were created with love, and they were created in the connection with the gods and the goddesses, or as we call them, the Neteru. Do you have any questions for me, Hercules?
No, not at all. It sounds wonderful what you're doing, and I look forward to learning more about it as it progresses and evolves.
I was very inspired. I saw all these other groups, various Wiccan and witch groups and other pagan groups, had a little more organization than the Kemetic peoples. And I said, this isn't working for me. What can I do? How can I help my people? And so, the old saying, don't wait for somebody else. And I never was that type of person. So
Mhm.
Michael took the initiative, and I said, here I am, and charge, let's do this. And
Good.
everybody said, yeah, cool, follow suit. So my Kemetic temple per Neteru online is going to be basically the hub, the center, just as you're doing here. And I'm very honored to be your representative for Kemet for Egypt.
And I'm very honored that we're working together, doing great things.
Well, it's important. We're waking up the world. And I'm going to be a bit wicked and say this, that I'm seeing the result, the fruits, as it were, of our labors. And I guess in your case, it would be pomegranates. After all, this is the time that Persephone left um, left her mother, Demeter, because she fell in love with Hades when she went down there, or wherever they are. And she fell in love with him, and she stayed there until Demeter insisted that she goes back in spring. And they say that's why Demeter was upset, and all the plants turn and die, all the leaves change, and everything crumbles and gets ready. Um, and I think that's an interesting way to look at it. Were you taught that as a boy in school?
Yes, I was. All the stories were taught to us, and they weren't the Victorian versions of the stories like you got here in the United States that are in the books on mythology that are in English that I grew up
I,
with. They
I
were
studied under Bullfinch. Well,
the more original versions of the myths, inappropriate as they were.
they gave it to us what we had. I'm sure you're going to cringe when I mention her name, but Edith Hamilton and Bullfinch. Um, there were many others, but those were the two that came to mind when I was in high school.
They
I
were
ended up I
fun.
ended up more or less teaching the mythology classes because those people were reading them. Anybody can read. It's another thing to, feel it, hear, and experience it.
I used to also teach the mythology in Bronx High School of Science. I taught my class there because the teacher just handed it over to me because I knew more than she did. And I used to write plays, and we stacked them out in high school also. So that was like the ritual, these little play things that were incidents from the life of Hercules and the labors.
In 1973, I'm proud to say, in Turtle Hook Junior High School, I played Jason in Euripides' Medea.
Yes, yes,
It
you
was
told me
a
that.
wonderful experience, and I encountered the goddess Hecate, or the Titaness. Forgive me, Hecate. I don't call her a goddess; it's lowering her. The Titaness Hecate, and I've had a love affair with her ever since. And I think that she and Isis have a competition for my attention sometimes. I feel like Paris with the apple.
Not a good position to be in.
Well, look what happened. I mean, it caused the Trojan War. And so, well, that and Helen. But I understand the goddesses were kind of ticked off too, and they created the situation between Alexander, who was later called Paris, and Helen of Troy.
Yes, it was rumored or predicted that young Alexander or Paris would cause the fall of Troy. So his parents went and exposed him as they did with young children back then. And then he was taken by someone who found him and brought to a neighboring king. And he was, no, that wasn't, that was Oedipus. He was raised in the countryside, and he was a shepherd and took care of animals and uh, guarded the flock from predators and things like that. So he was not recognized as a prince of Troy.
Well, that seems to be a theme among Greek heroes. That
Yes.
also happened to Jason.
And Hercules too. He was
and Perseus. You know, I mean, Hera got mad at Perseus because he was Zeus's bastard child. I don't know. They didn't look at it that way in the Greek times. But you know, Zeus had children everywhere, all over the place.
well,
So
he was a rain god and brought fertility. So the
he reigned a lot.
nature's manifestations and the tales they were based on became more human in the telling, and they gave rise to a lot of interesting, colorful stories.
Well, that's quite true. You know, and it's the same thing in Egypt. Osiris originally was a vegetation god, which is why he was green. It wasn't rigor mortis. Someone once said in school, like you, in Uniondale High School, I had a teacher who was Abrahamic, I'll be nice, and he wanted to teach the occult class. And I said, "Do you know anything about covens or such in this area?" And he said, "Oh, Michael." I said, "Well, I don't want to scare you, but I'm a witch. And there's a whole bunch of covens right here in River City, right here in Uniondale." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yes." And I ended up teaching the class as you did on the occult, on witchcraft, because after all, you know, who better than the shoe to teach the foot?
Remember in high school too, I discovered Wicca and the neo-pagan movement. In the Greece of my childhood, a lot of those old traditions were still alive. People didn't remember why they were doing them in many cases. Like there were different gods or faces of God, one of which was the God who thunders that people talked about. I remember jumping over bonfires. I remember young men wearing like lambskin bands and pretending that they're satyrs and then beating up people who are still outside that encounter them in their path. You know, all those ancient quote unquote pagan traditions were still being practiced, and the church knew about them, but they had been depaganized. They just became
Well, I mean, for instance, um, obviously the Germanic peoples had a Yule log and a Yule tree the year before. We have that Christmas tree.
right.
You have the maypole that supposedly the dance of the virgins in on May 1st. Many, many other things. St. Patrick's Day with all that nonsense. And the canonization of the goddess of Ireland, who is Bridget, who suddenly became a saint.
Saint.
Right.
Odysseus became a saint, and Hercules, in some accounts, became Luke, the dear and glorious physician, because Hercules um, was, in addition to being a patron of exercise and weightlifting and things like that, he was also the patron of hot healing springs and a lot of other therapeutics. So he was associated in the first centuries, much like Asclepius, as a physician.
Mm.
So there was supposedly graffiti behind one of the statues of Hercules that had been made it to the Christian era, and it said, "Oh, what have they done to me? Now I'm named Luke and I'm a physician." So
Well, there's also rumors that Hercules was also Saint Christopher, that
yes,
he bore the Christ across things. And I believe that. And then poor Saint Christopher was defrocked. I don't know how humans can take a saint. Of course, that's all what the Vatican and other Roman Catholic situations said. You know, this man is no longer a saint. Well, now they're after Joan of Arc. You know, they have
really,
been for about 25 years now. There's been research done, and the French government is furious because she is their patron saint.
right.
So it's been rumored, and very much so, that Joan of Arc, Jeanne d'Arc, was a cousin or somewhere related to the Dauphin, the Prince of France, a cousin, a niece, I don't know, I mean, a cousin or an aunt or something. In any case, she was taken off, just like the Greek hero. She was taken off to a little place in Rouen and Domremy in France, near Orleans. She is, after all, the Maid of Orleans.
Native Orleans, yes.
And they found in the Cathedral d'Orleans, which is a very, very old building, the Duke d'Orleans and his wife, La Duchesse. She was 44 when she died, She had, I think they said, 8 children with him. They said that she was 19 years old, which is what Joan of Arc was when she was allegedly roasted, and wore a veil in public, always never to be, her face was never seen in public. So the whole thing was very suspect that she, they say that they beat up and shaved the head of this poor girl, other girl, beat her up so she was unrecognizable, strangled her, and then burned her at the stake so that the princess, the duchess, could then be protected because you couldn't burn royals at the stake. So that's a
Well,
new thing, and there's a lot of people in Rome, a lot of priests in Rome that are investigating this. And as I said, the French government is furious because she is their patron saint, and I hate to be awful, but they want to make sure she was burned at the stake, and it was they didn't burn the wrong person.
yeah, that's an interesting story to follow, and I'll probably follow it because again, I grew up with the legends of
Oh yes.
the Maid of Orleans, as I learned it, as well as I did with Arthur and Merlin and Excalibur and El Cid and all the other figures
Um,
from Celtic or Neo-Celtic mythology.
Well, remember, I'm gonna pop my nose in as far as Merlin. My ancestors are my birth ancestors are Druid. So the high priest in a Druid group is a Merlin, a Melin. That's his name. There were at least nine that were recorded in 200, 300 years before the Romans came. And then later there was another one, and that's probably the one that was in the Arthurian times. Um, what I was going to say though is that they believe they destroyed all the Druids. The Romans, Caligula and Claudius, thought they eradicated them, and they most certainly didn't. They didn't get to the Isle of Man. They didn't get to Ireland. They didn't get up to Scotland. They got to the southern part of England. They came to London, just below London in Bath. We know that there is the temples that are there, and Colchester, and York, and Lancaster. Those all those places the Romans did get to. And we know they got almost up to Northumberland. I think that's where the end of Hadrian's Wall is, where the separation between what is considered England and what is considered the North Country. But my point is this, that the Romans didn't start all that. And they didn't understand. And I love the little joke that I was talking to my roommate about earlier. Um, Claudius, about I guess 11 or 12 years after Caligula's ridiculous attack on England, and he left a lot of the legions there to guard England. And Claudius went to go find them, and he got to a chieftain, probably a druid, and he asked how they found them, and the druid replied, "Delicious." So that week they had Italian.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that story before. A new story. Thank you.
The druids have been known to be cannibals, so that was. I guess one week they'd have German, the next week they'd have whatever Scandinavian, made Swedish meatballs out of the Vikings, those kind of things. So I wanted to say that because it's A, funny, but B, also those traditions were blended into the English Druidic traditions. And so, just as in Egypt, the Greek traditions, Alexander brought Zeus to the temple of Ammon and he became Zeus Ammon. And
Yes.
Isis became Isis Hera, and you have Hathor, Aphrodite, and Anubis Apollo, which is ludicrous because Anubis isn't even a sun god. It should have been Horus Apollo. And then there are other temples where he is Horus Apollo.
Yeah, those are interesting, and that's a whole study. It's kind of been a side study of mine, the syncretic combinations of the gods and what that tells us. And Hercules, for instance, in addition with Horus, he's also associated with Bes, and that's old because Hercules was one of the Phrygian dactyls, one of the fingers of the goddess Rhea, who hid the baby Zeus in the cave Invictus in Crete. And one of those dactyls was Hercules. and they were often thought to be pygmies or midgets or stunted, dwarves. So Bess was thought to be very dwarf-like. So that's the connection there, and also with Shu, because Shu is very much like Atlas, and during
Yes.
Hercules' labors, he had to hold the heavens on his shoulders for a while Atlas went and got the golden apples of the Hesperides. So he's associated with Shu. And none of those associations is exact, but there's a reason for them. And studying the reasons for them and asking yourself, why would they associate Apollo with Anubis? Sometimes it reveals some very interesting insights.
Well, the thing interesting about when you mentioned Bess, Bess and the goddess, who's very much like Hecate, I would call her a Titaness also, Neith, do not come from Egypt originally. Bess is an Assyrian god. He came Sumerian, Assyrian, very ancient deity. And peddlers came with his belief, and the Egyptians took them under their wing. They fell in love with them. So there they came, and they think that Isis is also an asset, which is the throne. That's her name. They think the name came from Astarte.
Mhm.
And it's possible because, those deities are so very ancient. So it's an interesting thing to think about.
Well, a lot of the Hercules legends come from the ancient Near East also originally. There was Melkart of Tyre or Phoenicia or Carthage later on, who was the Phoenician god who's equated even during the time of Herodotus with Hercules. And the iconography was identical. And Anath, whose Baal means Lord. So Baal wasn't one deity. Baal was the title of all the different lords from that area of the Mediterranean Sea. So Melkar was one of the Baalim, and Baal's sister was Anath, who's very Athena-like. And Thebes, where Hercules spent some of his childhood and a lot of his legend is attached, uh, was a place where the brothers who were seeking out Europa when Zeus took her from Tyre, they formed the colony of Thebes. So a lot of the lore from the Phoenicia became part of the Theban lore. And that explains some of the Greek myths about Hercules and Athena that were found there.
I find it interesting that the Greeks took the name of the city, Thebes, which of course is
Yes.
was an Egyptian's name originally. The city where they call Karnak and Luxor, even now, was Thebes. And I often wondered that those Thebans mix with the Greek Thebans, and create, like, for instance, there's a Newark, Ohio, and a Newark, New Jersey.
Right, and there's New
Newark, the
York,
people,
which
yeah, the people from Newark, New Jersey, people of Newark, Ohio. I only know that because my housemate is from Newark, Ohio originally, and they know the story.
and there's an Athens in Georgia, I believe. So
Oh, yes, and there's a Cairo, New York.
people took these names and transplanted them to new places. So I'm positive that happened in antiquity as well. But yeah, Theba is based on Thebes of Egypt.
And it's kind of cool, I think.
I think
They showed I always saw a very strong connection between the Egyptian peoples and the Grecian peoples. I did, the Olympic peoples. Those seemed to be a positive accord, and then both of them had problems with the Romans, of course, later. The Romans wanted to rule everything, but they wanted the Greek traditions and they wanted the Greek myths
they took
and everything.
and they mixed them with their own, and that gave birth to some interesting hybrids and stories. With the Etruscans, who were older than Rome, uh,
Yes, they were.
Turians, where Tuscany is now, there were a lot of Greeks. In fact, it was called Nova Grossia, New Greece at the time. And there they had other versions of the stories as well. They had Hercules was not a mortal born, he was immortal. He was married to Minerva or Athena, and he was Hera's son. He wasn't Zeus's alone, and there was no animosity between Hercules and Hera. And Ares was the son of Hercules and Minerva.
It makes more sense to me that that's the case. Hercules means beloved of Hera. So why would she, why would she be hating toward him? I didn't think so. I do think that the union of Zeus and Hera created Hercules. I do. I don't think he was mortal at all. I think that the mortal peoples, as they took the myth, the legend, I'm going to call it not a myth, and I think they took it and then, as many other stories, molded it to suit their purposes.
Right, and to suit their tastes. The Greeks loved irony, so they made Hera the goddess of marriage, and her husband was always cheating on her. They made Ares the god of war, but he was kind of like a bully and kind of cowardly, and they had Hercules be the glory of Hera, but she hated him and wanted to destroy him. So that made the stories a lot more interesting, and it reflected the character of the Greeks. I'm a Lemnian Greek, and genetically, and now that we have genetic tests, they've mapped a lot of this out. I'm very similar genetically to the Trojans and to the Etrurians, and Lemnos was part of a lot of the different empires beyond the Greek one. It was part of Rome. It was part of a Balkan Pelasgian empire before then. So again, there's a lot of influx, and it's interesting to study the different tales and what they tell you. Like,
Do you have Amazon ancestors?
yes,
Lemnos was the island of the Amazons. I know that.
yes, there's a good website on the Amazons and Lemnos that I've looked at a couple of times. The Amazons, and they became Amazons in the Jason and the Argonauts movies and things.
Yes, they did.
Were just Lemnian women, but they were a matriarchal society without men, and they were the first place that the Argo landed on their voyage to the Golden Fleece. And the children of the Argonauts ruled Lemnos for a couple of generations until they were cast out. And then some of them went down to Africa to the Dogon tribe. So the Dogon, that figure very prominently in the ancient alien or ancient astronaut theories, they have memories of the Argo going there after they left Greece as well.
Well, we know also in the Ptolemaic times in Egypt there are Greek temples. Not
Yes,
not not to the Greek, not to the Egyptian gods or goddesses at all. The Ptolemies, after all, were Macedonian Greeks. And although they ruled Egypt, they really didn't enjoy the Egyptians. They didn't like them. They felt that they were Cleopatra's grandmother, who was also a Cleopatra. She was the fifth, I believe. She called them the little brown people, which is very demeaning. But
yes.
she decided she was a Greek and she was only they were her her subjects, and that all they were to do was be bring taxes and wheat and whatever else the Ptolemies decided. And a lot of that went back. People don't realize a lot of that went back to Macedonia. They knew that they were vassals. The Ptolemies were royalty, but they also knew they were vassals to Macedonia, and that's how Julius Caesar and the others, and before him Pompey, got in there and said, "Look, we just conquered Macedonia. Now we own you." And that's how that went. But the funny thing was the Romans refurbished. I don't know if you know this, many of you, but the Romans refurbished a lot of the Egyptian temples. The other terrible thing they did was take the white casing, the limestone casing off the pyramids to build beautiful palaces. And they thought the limestone and the marble looked amazing, so why not just take it? They considered the pyramids basically stockpile, something to use with. Um,
And
the Egyptians.
that happens in Greece, even during time when I was growing up, that people would steal stones from temples and other ancient structures for their patios or things like that because they were pre-cut and the ruins are neglected. So maybe they don't need these things anymore.
Well, that's what a lot of the Egyptians did the same thing after the destruction of Akhenaten. A lot of the rubble in the pyramids, rubble in the Temple of Thebes and Karnak, where they were building bigger pylons, a lot of the inside to hold them up was made from Akhenaten's crumpled temples. Now, when they found those temples ruined, the pylons in Karnak, and they found all these pieces of Akhenaten's temples. They were, 500 miles north of, I mean, south of where they were. So they've been able to assemble. So in a way, it kind of preserved Akhenaten's legacy, which is interesting because otherwise the whole world would have, he was obliterated except for Nefertiti. But there's a whole jury out, they're still testing to see if that statue is actually real. I believe it is because she was a Persian and she doesn't look as Egyptian because she wasn't by birth. But they think that that was made in the 1900s, not in, and over. You've seen many, many unfinished busts of Nefertiti. There's
Yes,
one, yeah. Well, they think they took one of those and embellished it to make that statue. And
and and even if you have occult vision and look at the astral, so many people have looked on the astral there that you're not going to make out any reality. There's just so much astral imagination overlaying it, everything that you'll see a version of it, just like you see a different version of a movie or something.
oh, absolutely. All of the stories, like I love The Life of Brian by Monty Python.
Me too.
It's an interesting take on what how Jesus became a superstar. And I agree with it. One person saw, oh, maybe he gave somebody a fish. All of a sudden there were thousands of fishes.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, he, with one glass of wine, he turned all the water into the wine into water, water into wine, and he fed thousands of people. Well, what they don't say is that maybe the people that were up on that hill listening to the Sermon on the Mount, maybe they brought their lunch with them and they
That's
shared.
a possibility. Yes.
Nobody mentions that. I mean, they were there was so much, but that's the thing that I love about Brian is because it shows all these other realms of possibility. And that, how ludicrous people would always change stories. I mean, surely all of you know when you were in school, let's say Tommy stole Billy's lunch. All of a sudden, Tommy was killing Billy, or Tommy, sent Billy into into the hospital. It went on and on. It just built, and I'm sure the ancients did the same thing.
Yeah, the moderns do that too. I remember when I was a kid in Greece, there was a story that was going around the village that a sinner went to church and the statue, one of the statues that was outside the church, I think it was of Moses or something, took the book that was made of stone and flung it at the person and all this other thing. And it was going around and people were relating the story to one another and I finally tracked down the truth of it. Somebody had read in the newspaper about how they refurbished a statue that was outside the temple, and they paid special attention to the book or something. So
Mm.
somebody reading that and then spreading the story, and it became this whole miracle thing with vengeance and throwing stone books at people and so forth.
I mean, it goes on and on. There's a whole thing still about the Shroud of Turin. Is it real? Is it not? Well, the carbon dating that they can get, as farthest back they can get, is that the canvas that it was made on was made in the 14th century, 13 something or other. So, I mean, Jesus was, I mean, Josu Bar Joseph was the first century AD, Anno Domini. And that was, 400 years earlier. So that doesn't work for me.
No, but still, the story is so strong that even if people are confronted with that and there's proof, it's not going to do much to diminish the tale.
There are so many artifacts, even in Egypt. The backbone of Osiris is in the shrine of Osiris, which is in the Holy of Holies, and it's in the Louvre. I mentioned this before. There was a great Egyptologist, brilliant woman, Seti, and she worked to build the temple, to rebuild the funerary temple of the pharaoh Seti, but she also rebuilt the temple at Abydos of Osiris, which was built by Ramesses II and his father Seti. But all that work and that shrine is still in the Louvre, like the beautiful Elgin marbles, which are the
Yes.
friezes all the way around the Parthenon. And I don't understand why the British don't realize that that's not cool.
yeah, there's the whole thing. The British and other European powers who stole things from Greece and other places, they were saying that the Greeks that were in Greece are not the same as the ancient Greeks. That the modern Greeks were Slavic peoples who'd wandered there, and the ancient Greeks were no longer around, so it doesn't belong to the modern Greeks. Now that they have DNA evidence that it is the same people, I'm surprised they haven't given back any of these marbles, but there must be some
Mm,
other excuse now.
Zahi Hawass in Egypt did exactly the same thing with mummies and the populace in Cairo. And they are the same people. The Egyptians are still the Egyptians. Yes, there was an influx of Arabian peoples as well, and Greeks and the Spanish and everybody else, the French, the English, they all conquered the Romans, they all conquered Egypt. But the core people that you'll find in Cairo and further down into Luxor and the other parts of the cataracts of the Nile, you're going to find the same indigenous peoples
Same
that were
people.
there. Yeah. So I think it's silly. I mean, like there's a bust of Nefertiti. It's in Berlin, which by the way I may go see in February. I
Oh,
should I should
awesome.
tell. Yes, I have a friend of mine that's going to be going to Berlin and to Antwerp and to Amsterdam, and I'll be headed that way. I don't think February is a very good idea to do that because it snows, it's cold, but I'm used to that. I mean, I may be a Savanian now, but I was a native New Yorker, so cold is not something it's no big deal. These people, it was 55 degrees when I started to go out for breakfast, and they're all in heavy duty tundra coats. What do you call parkas? They're freezing, and they're all And I'm thinking it's beautiful and warm because for New Yorkers and New Jersey people, 54 degrees is a heat wave for this time
Yes,
of the
pretty warm.
year.
Yeah, I've had that experience too in different places I've traveled, but I'm
It's
from
funny.
here and they're dressed like it's freezing and I'm in my t-shirt and comfortable.
I had a lightweight jacket on and a t-shirt, and I had no socks and I had sandals on. And they were all like, "What's wrong with you?" They all had boots on and all dressed. They were all freezing. Anyway, I'm digressing and I do apologize. So
No, life is for digression.
but we're doing good. I'm doing amazing new things
Yes, you are.
for my people. It's always been. I tried very hard to get contributions. Right after the summer solstice, I sought help, GoFundMe to build the temples or a temple, and I fell on deaf ears. Had it been an emergency, that maybe my house collapsed, I think somebody might have done something, but I do say, and maybe I'm wrong, but this was secular. And I think that's what people were like, well, I don't believe in that religion, so I'm not going to help you. And I think that's what happened. And I'm sorry that's how I feel, but that's how it seemed to me that they just,
That's understandable.
and I was hurt. I was very hurt because, when we had the disasters in Sandy, I gave whatever I could financially. I wasn't rich, but I gave whatever I could, and I was right there on food banks, putting food in, and I was in soup kitchens taking care of people. And I just thought, well, where's the balance there? That here we did, and I'm not saying I was expecting it. I was just saying, it was kind of sad that if it were a synagogue or a church, they would have helped.
I think it might be, as you surmise, that basically people might give in an emergency, whether it's for a person or for people that have experienced something unpleasant or untoward or unexpected. But if you're presenting it as a request for help in building temples, then well, I don't belong to that religion, as you said. One might be a special consideration.
And it's okay. In the long run, I beefed up my cyber temple here on the Neteru on Zoom and on Facebook and on Instagram. So I can reach out to a much larger audience that way. I was looking for a sanctuary, how will I put it? A hub, You know what I mean? A center where everyone could, if they wanted to, come to. But this way, I do just what I'm doing right now. I talk to people all over the world because we're on Zoom and we're on YouTube. And so that works fine. You know, if that's what the gods have asked for of things, so mote it be. I'm not gonna fight it. Go with the flow. This we are in a technologically a more advanced world. I can reach millions of people this way. And so we do. But I will tell you all. So if you are interested in being an artisan or a jewelry maker, if you're looking to be a scribe, I have teachers. We have many, many people. If you want to work with the prayers and learn what, for instance, if you're interested in Thoth or Bast or Sekhmet, what are the proper ways to address those deities? We have that. We have a system where, you'll start out. As what we call a seeker, somebody who is just learning, just figuring things out. And that's that level. The next one will be the journeyman level, where, we'll say you'll be assigned to a different part of whatever your talent is, and you'll be assigned that way. There is the I'll call them the court of the mystics, which is what Hercules is, of course. So you have people who are psychic, who are involved with divination and prediction, and also are very paranormalists. So they and spiritual that work with those that have crossed on or higher forms of spirituality, gods, goddesses, lesser beings of the spirit realms. So we have that. And then there's people that will want to be scribes that will, transcribe these things and send them out. These days, they're going to make probably CDs. They're going to send them out to people, or they're going to be talking as I am right now on Zoom or some other media. And those people will be, I'll call them cyber scribes. How does that sound? And they'll be producing books also. I have books coming out on Lulu. And
Awesome.
I have books coming out. I hope I've sent some information as you had recommended. I sent something to Llewellyn and I sent something to Samuel Weisers. I doubt Samuel Weisers because I'm a new author. I don't think they'll listen to me. But you never know. I mean, I do have a name in the industry and obviously in the pagan community, I do have some weight, literally. Um, but from the priest and priestess level, you will go to a what I call a godhead level. So you'll be representing Nephthys, Selkis, Vast, Anubis. Ancient times you'd be wearing a mask. I have turned away from that. It's kind of crazy. I mean, let's face it, I'm a little overdone right now. I've got a collar on, lots of things. I don't do tattoos, I do jewelry. It's just how I feel. So this is how I express myself. Um,
And speaking about books, I'm going to plug my book,
Go right ahead.
the Theurgy Seven Approaches to Divine Connection. And it's coming out on the 8th, which is in 2 days on Amazon. It's currently on Google Books as an ebook, and it's in the catalog for Llewellyn, and it's available through there as well. I don't know, it's probably in Barnes and Noble and other bookstores as well on their websites or in their catalogs. But that is a book on theurgy, which is, basically, as the title suggests, about connecting with and becoming a expression of or conduit for divine energies from antiquity.
Well, I know that that's going to be very successful. My book is called The Book of Setna, which makes sense.
Yes.
Um, It is if I were taking as a Wiccan or a witch, it is the grimoire, it is the writings of my rituals, my prayers, my workings, what I've done over the years, and how to do those things. And my experiences is kind of a how to plus a journal. So I thought that would be my gift to the world and to say thank you for my life and I feel very blessed for what I've had with my life. Not everything is perfect, that's true. But I wouldn't change a bit of it. I've had a very good life, and I'm grateful to the universe and to the gods to giving that to me. And so Um, this is my way to say thank you, but it's also going to be a textbook. Those that will be working with us can learn and use this book to go forward. And I've spoken to the other memberships, and I can say memberships that way because there are many internationally, and they're interested in working with this book. And they will then do their own things too. There's a great author. Her name is Tracy Ragula. She wrote an amazing book called The Mysteries of Isis, which I must highly recommend. And also the late great, I don't know, Robert. Okay, I bet I'm going to lose my. It's blueberries I need. But there's a book called The Serpent in the Sky, which I also
Yes,
recommend.
that's a great book. I read it years ago.
And that would be another thing. And I've also got Murray Hope's rather nutty Practical Egyptian Magic. As Hercules often says, practical Greek magic is nonsense. And it's true.
But it's
They,
good. It's a good introductory book for people who
yes,
grew up with
yes.
Judith Hamilton and Thomas Bulfinch, and that's what they know, which is most of the people in our culture and what's appeared in pop culture. Murray Hope's book is a perfect book to get them into understanding uh, the Greek worldview as expressed in those myths. And after that, you would discover that there are the Greco-Egyptian papyri. There's the writing of the philosophers and the theurgists and all sorts of other people. So you can go study the real stuff. Murray Hope's book is the
It's
best
a basic.
introduction.
It's basic.
Yeah,
It's the same with me. She has rituals, which I will say are very good. There are prayers in there that are very good. What I would say is an opportunity is the choice of colors for the particular gods and goddesses. I think she had her own way of doing things. Many contemporary 20th century authors did. They took what they knew. Even I was discussing with an Egyptologist who's a linguist about language. Champollion, the French decipherer, they say, of the Rosetta Stone. Well, I have some issues with that too. The French word for night is nuit, Nuit, nuit. Well, the goddess of the night in Egypt is Nuit. I have a problem with that, or not, if you wish. And if you are to say I'm beautiful in French, the girl's name is Jennifer, Jennifer, which means I'm beautiful. The word for beautiful in Egypt is Nefer. Now, that's what we got from Champollion. Now, how do we know he didn't decide, methinks after all, the Egyptians were the French? Oh.
maybe.
We don't know, but it's funny how he did that. He chose those words. And I looked at it, and there are many other things too, but he also did give us a great way to read the hieroglyphs. And so the dictionary that I have is a very old one, is by E. Wallace Budge, the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary. There are 2 volumes. They weigh about 10 pounds each, but they're worth looking at. But I have a friend of mine now whose name is Björn, and he is doing not only the hieroglyph, the translations better, but he's also being able to give you the way it sounds. So you'll be able to speak just as we can speak in Latin, because let's face it, the Catholic Church kept it alive.
Right.
We'll be able to speak in ancient Egyptian.
That's that is incredibly awesome.
An amazing archaeologist and linguist at the same time. And so I'm very honored that I'm able to work with him. And, so those will things that will also be teaching the people that come and work with us so that they can have that if they want to do those prayers. As I was saying before, though, maybe wearing amulets and things is one thing, but what we're creating to represent the deity is a shawl. I can't show them to you. They're still in the works, but they will have basically like a scarf that'll go around the side of the neck and down into the shoulders, which will have on it the hieroglyphs of who you are and what your position is and what you do. And I like it because in a way it's still secret. You're not telling everybody in the world, I'm representing Nut, or I'm representing Ta, or Nut, or Vast, or what have you. Your people that are reading that read it because they understand that hieroglyph. And so it keeps that tradition done, just as there are certain secret prayers in Catholicism, in Islam, in Hinduism, and in Judaism. There are things that they do unto themselves. And I know the Greeks did the same thing.
One thing I can suggest to you, and this is a road well traveled if you want to go the temple route, is to look at websites like the Universal Life Church, and they tell you how to start a church at home. A lot of the churches from the Abrahamic faiths that are more popular in our culture started out as home churches, where you build
Yes.
a congregation in your house or in somebody in a rotation of houses or whatever. And
This is something I've done all my life, Hercules.
okay,
That I've done, I've always had little, it's true.
present.
They say if you sneeze, it's true. Cyber groups, physical groups, small groups in all of my apartments and all my homes. So I do know that that's possible. And I had some of them that were, I couldn't fit them in my living room anymore. We had to go to auditoriums and such. And
And
then,
so you know that, yeah. And that might be a slower route, but you'll build the congregation, you'll fulfill a lot of the requirements for starting a 501c3, religious one, because they're still kind of poogly with the online and what counts as a member of your congregation and things like that. So if you have an actual congregation, uh,
well, that's what's going on here in Savannah. I do have 5 people that I'm working with,
awesome.
and it's growing. Which someone suddenly they said, "Oh my God, he's an Egyptian. That's cool," and they come from. And I did have Wiccan and witches that we're working with, but that isn't the road that I'm in. I'm not going to do what's already done by those people. I'm doing what I do.
Right.
I'm being a little selfish, but I want to do this as Tony Bennett and Paul Anka and Sinatra said, I'm going to do it my way. I want to do, yeah, unto
My
thyself be true.
my chapter in the theurgy book is called I Was a Teenage Theurgist. And it's very much my way. It talks about how growing up Greek, I learned about the ancient theurgists, but I had no material on them because even though they were part of the tradition, they didn't want you following it, so they didn't tell you what it was about. So until I learned more, I was jury rigging things and doing it based on what tools I was given by the Greek Orthodox Church. So I developed my own form of theurgy. And the thing is, it worked for me and it's worked for other people. But yeah, I'm very much a do it your own way type of person as well. And I applaud that. And this hour has passed by very, very quickly. And
Indeed.
I enjoyed speaking to you as always. And I'm glad you're doing well. And I'm impressed by all that you've been doing. And I look forward to learning more about it as it progresses. And you're also right that the path is not always easy, but it's worth taking, especially if it's the path that resonates with your heart, with your soul, and your soul's unique way.
Thank you. And I know that it's always been a rough road, but you know what? I'm called what my last name is Waterman. So I've learned how to swim through
There you go.
it.
Thank you very much, Setna Kamwast of Kemet, and thanks to all who are listening. Until next time, this is us wishing you joyous journeys and amazing adventures. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Life, health, and prosperity to all, and blessed be.
What he said.